adjust it in the back.
You think it's good?
Did you try the sound?
Go ahead.
Why don't you try it? We've got 30 seconds yet. Turn it on and you're turning this on too then? You're going to put...
Sure.
Is it playing? Oh, we might get in trouble with sound, huh?
I wish
Concerning the presentation, is it nice to have or need to have? Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's a good spot to be in.
The sound.
Oh, the sound is probably not going to work.
Oh.
This one?
Sound is probably not going to work. It's so hit and miss.
Kelsey, they have a video they are going to want to play.
Because I had to plug in some other stuff.
Kelsey doesn't really work for us. We just pretend that she does.
I know. I just tell her that she does. We just hire her as an independent.
She has her own company. Yeah.
She went to.
This is like a jack of all trades. Yep,
We good?
Go ahead and go and if they have it, great. They can keep working on it.
All right. We're
They have to pause during
after
the
6.
pledge, but other than that, they can work on it.
I know. He just handed that to you. I know. I know. I just was teasing
If you can get it to play on your computer, you can always mic it into, like, take the mic and hold it in front of it. That will work too.
Yep.
It's low tech, but it works.
You did not.
Since it isn't a technology adoption.
All right. Right. If Matt was here, we wouldn't have to need it.
Yep.
Matt would get it going.
ahead and
Okay.
go.
Kelsey, I'm going to go ahead and go. So, good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Waterloo Community School District Board of Education meeting to order and ask that you join me this evening in a moment of silence. Thank you. And will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's all
Doing
right.
the rock and roll version of
That's
the
fine.
pledge.
We've got sound during the pledge. We've got the flag on the different side. It's all good. It's all good. So, and this evening, Jesse Knight will read our mission statement.
The Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community.
Thanks, Jesse. The next item on our agenda is Exhibit A. It is the public hearing for the 2017-18 budget certification, and I will declare the hearing open and ask if there's anyone here to address the board on the subject of the budget certification to come forward. State your name and address. Then seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Thanks, Sue, and a second.
Second.
Thanks, Jesse, and the hearing is closed. The next item on our agenda is Exhibit B. This is a board celebration from the West High School AFJROTC drill team. And I know that Major Richards is here tonight, and we've got some students here tonight. So I'd ask you to come forward, and let me just add that you all were here a few months ago, and we asked you to come back because we're really excited to hear how you've done in all your competitions. So that is why you guys are here tonight.
Thank you for inviting us back, Ms. Flynn.
Green button. There we go.
There it goes.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn, for inviting us back. You were the one that asked me back in the fall, and I told you I'd let you know, or I'd ask. I asked Pam a couple of weeks ago, and she said absolutely. So we want to come back and share what we thought we had a successful year, and we'll start with Skylar Torrey here to talk a little bit.
Okay, so to start off the year, kind of drill unrelated, we received exceeds expectations on our triannual inspection, where they have a retired Air Force officer come down and inspect our unit, see how we're doing, and we got the highest rating possible. So that was a good way to start off our year. We also started a exhibition team. So before this year, we stuck to strict regulation, which is just following the Army manual on how to do drill and everything like that. But with exhibition, you can kind of create your own routine and just do whatever you want with it, and it was just really fun to start up. We did really good this drill season. We had 4 drill competitions, and also our own as a 5th one. Our first one was Lee Summit, and I'll have Rasan start that off.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rasan Nelson. I'm a first-year cadet with the Waterloo AFJROTC. I am also the commander for the 2nd Team Color Guard. Our first drill meet of the year, as he mentioned, was Lee Summit West down in Kansas City. We traveled about 5 or 6 hours down there, and we placed 3rd for unarmed and 3rd place for new cadet out of about 10 schools roughly. So we did pretty good for our first drill meet, and we also had the opportunity to go to the National World War I Museum in Kansas City and learned a lot about what the past veterans went through there. Our next drill meet was at the Council Bluffs drill meet. We took 1st place in armed and unarmed regulation, so marching with rifles and then just standard marching. We also took 3rd place for unarmed exhibition, which we, as he mentioned, create our own regulation and routine for the drill meet. So I feel like we did very well there too, and continue to do well. So I'll let him talk about that.
Good evening, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Slack. So at Omaha, or University of Northern Omaha, we took 2nd place in Color Guard. And at Bellevue, we took 2nd place in Exhibition Color Guard and 3rd place in Regulation Color Guard.
Do you all have a place at West High where you can show off all that hardware that you brought home from all these things?
We have a table, or actually 2 tables now, down in our hallway downstairs. We put them all on.
Okay, so people could take a look at them if they wanted to.
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
So when you say exhibition and you get to make up your own routine, is that like on Major Pain? Like when they come and they battle at the end?
Yes, ma'am. Very much so. And we have time limits that we have to meet. Typically, it's anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes is the usual ballpark range. So the kids will sit there and time themselves after they make a few events, and they tend to go a little faster when they compete. So we have to make it a little bit longer, because as you get nervous and you proceed, you tend to speed up. So.
Well, and I see on here, and I want to thank you for coming, because we often have groups come and we never hear how they did, and so I'd really like it if you guys could perform here, but obviously that's harder to do. Little small area, but and then I did notice that Skylar, you got 1st place, so that it says you got 1st place in the individual drill. Is that accurate?
It's kind of like a Simon Says type thing. They'll have one of the judges stand up front, and you'll have somewhere between like 100 and 500 cadets on the floor, and they'll just keep calling commands, and you'll have other judges walking around seeing if you're doing everything perfect.
Yeah, I saw that when you had that, and that is awesome. So congratulations on that 1st place out of that many people. That's really good. And I guess I would be amiss to say that we're going to miss your leadership. you've done a great job with that program at West High, and we wish you great luck going forward, but we'll miss your whole family. I see your lovely wife back there too, but we really, I think the program has thrived under you, and these young men all speaking up there are so versed, and I think what they learn in your program is evident here, and I just want to thank you personally for the good job you've done there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
How many total participants were there?
We have anywhere between 22 and 25 drill team members, and we sit between 95 and 100 cadets total.
Okay.
Major Richards, could you introduce the other guests in the crowd? It would be fun if.
In the back,
Norton
we
then.
actually have two. Sergeant Norton is my counterpart. He is the NCO that helps run. Typically, you have two members in each attachment, and then the young lady sitting next to him on the right is one of our commanders as well, Jasmine Torrey, Skylar's younger sister.
Wonderful.
Keep up the good
Thank you.
work.
Yes,
And next
thank
year,
you.
you're still are you two underclassmen? Are you you're graduating?
Skylar's done.
And you're an underclassman? Or?
Yeah, both of us.
Oh, great. So we will look forward to seeing you here next year.
Skylar,
Go ahead. We all want to know what your plans are. We
Yeah, I
all
was
were
like-
going to say the same thing.
We were, because I was like, did you apply for the ROTC scholarship?
So
Step over to the microphone, then the public that's watching this on TV, 10,000 viewers.
Okay, so
that's going to make this Simon Says thing.
Minus 9,999.
So after high school, I plan on going to Iowa State for a year, and there I'll do ROTC, and then I'm gonna try and let my grades in college and my leadership in ROTC kind of show the Air Force Academy what I have to offer, and then hopefully get into there. But if that doesn't plan out, then I'll just stay the rest of my years in ROTC. I'll study psychology, but when I get in the Air Force, I want to go for Special Forces, Combat Rescue Officer, or CROW. But that's like really hard training, so if for some reason I'm not able to completely do that, then I'll just do psychology in the Air Force.
Excellent. Great plan.
And you did apply for the ROTC scholarship. Iowa State is like the only place in Iowa that has, right?
Yeah. I didn't apply for the ROTC scholarship. I was more focused on, I specified myself and just focusing on getting in the academy, but I didn't have a high enough ACT score to start attempting to go for that. So since I was so focused on that, I didn't have time to do the Air Force scholarship.
You should still check.
But and I would encourage you to stay focused, and even 4 years in the ROTC at Iowa State, I had a niece that went to Baylor through the Air Force ROTC, and she's in Las Vegas now in cyber and just doing wonderful things. So
Yeah.
just encourage you to just, even if you don't get into the academy, you still can do wonderful things.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Yay. Thank you all. We appreciate it.
That's great.
Excellent. The next item on our agenda then is Exhibit C, and this is another board celebration this evening. Pardon me. We have, let's see, I'm looking to see, I know we have Ms. Thornsberry here, and
Stacy Snyder.
and Stacy Snyder.
the
I
LP
didn't
teacher.
have Stacy. I didn't have your name for sure. I just wanted to make sure. Would the two of you like to come forward? We would like to honor you for the presentation of your conservation award. And I know that we were able to see some of the other things that we've talked about, some of the playground amenities with the bridge and such at other meetings. But I'd really like for you to tell us a little bit more about the project. So, great.
Hi, I'm Jerry Thornsberry, and currently I serve as the chair of the Black Hawk Soil and Water Conservation District. We are passionate about improving water quality here in Black Hawk County and keeping the soil where it belongs, which means not in our creeks and rivers and the Mississippi. And we were founded in 1945. Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked to Congress and established that soil and water districts be formed in every state in the United States. And so we've been working really hard on conservation after the Dust Bowl rolled through. So we meet every year with the Blackhawk County, Iowa's Corn and Soybean Association. They have an annual meeting, and they invited us as a conservation district to present conservation awards. And we actually do more awards for conservation teachers than others because we feel like it's so important. They are creating the zeal for conservation in the younger people. And we have an urban conservationist, and then of course the conservation farmer of the year. And so this year we honored Stacy for her tremendous work at Orange Elementary. One of our assistant commissioners, Mike Henning, works with a lot of people over at Orange and recommended her. And the work that she does is so fascinating, from tagging butterflies, the monarchs, as they make their way to Mexico, and the work on conservation for the wetlands and the you did a bridge.
That's what they're
Yeah, the bridge that we did. That was very, very interesting. And what's really neat is that she works with Bremer County, our sister county. And so we were so pleased to offer this award to Stacy because of her passion. You know, it began when she was a young girl on the farm, and she's carried it through. And I'm sure that she has influenced generations of kids that she's touched their lives. And we so appreciate that. The award we have says Blackhawk Soil and Water Conservation District 2017 Conservation Teacher of the Year, presented to Stacy Snyder in recognition of promoting environmental education to students. We're so happy you're with us. Thank you so much. You want to say a few words? Okay.
While they're doing that, I'm going to just fill the airtime. But my students often will come home. They are in the school where Stacy is, and my two own boys will come home very often. And boy, do they tell me everything she has in her classroom, whether it's a spider or a turtle or a variety of things. And so then, my little one loves bug collection. That is just his favorite thing. He has a little bug catcher, and he caught crickets. And then they brought him in and they fed him to the turtles. And he could not wait to get home to tell me how he had contributed to your classroom. So thank you for what you do. That's awesome. Do you have just a statement about, your anything you want to say?
Like she said, it's been my passion since I was a child, and I've worked at 2 county conservation boards as an interpretive naturalist, been a science teacher, and so it's something natural, and it's something. I've been a citizen science person since 1990 and helping scientists do research, and so it's an easy extension for me to offer to students. And like you just said, your kids, they're a testament to, they really enjoy it. They ask for more, and actually one of my students, Drew Hundley, just wrote through the Waterloo School Foundation. He wanted to learn more about some of the citizen science. He found out that the Omaha Zoo was offering amphibian training, and so he wrote to them and said, I want to go to the Omaha Zoo and take my class, and so we're going to the Omaha Zoo. Wow. So there's all sorts of great avenues, and I appreciate the recognition, but I just believe it's the right thing to do for kids. So.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We'll have to come out and see the bridge when it's done. It'll give us something to do. So, be great. What'd you say? Have a board meeting out there?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We could tag monarchs. Yeah. Great. The next item on our agenda then is information from individuals and delegations. Is there anyone here this evening that wishes to address the board? All right, then seeing no one, we'll move on then to our consent agenda. I do have one revision to the consent agenda this evening. Item H is being deleted. It's being omitted. That item is not ready for tonight's agenda. So the agenda will consist then of item D, which is the minutes of the March 27th, 2017 regular board meeting. Item E, which is personnel appointments and adjustments. Item F, which is bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings. And item G, the Iowa School Finance Information Services, ISFIS, 2017-18 subscription fee. Can I get a motion to put those items on the table, please?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. And a second? Rhonda, thank you. And are there any items that members would wish to have removed? I know I already removed one, but that one was really done. All right, then seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda items D, E, F, and G, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. The next item on our agenda is item I. It's the adoption of the EarthCom science curriculum for high school earth and space science. It's on page 33. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the adoption of EarthCom curriculum for high school earth and space science in the amount of $180,097. Can I get that on the...
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
And discussion, and I know we've got quite a few scientists and faculty here tonight. Mr. Conyers, it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you and everybody on the board, of course.
And I think you actually have a presentation, so we'll let you present your information and then we can open it up if that's all right.
Yeah, so
Okay,
esteemed board members, I get to introduce you to the amazing group of professionals that I work with as part of the district science leadership team. So we're going to talk about a decision that we just recently made. As you know, the last time we talked to you, you guys approved revisions to the high school planning guide that added a new science course called Earth and Space Science. I'm so excited to work on this course. I think it is absolutely critical for the future of our community and our state and our country and our world. We have found a curriculum that we like, that we enjoy, and that we hope to use for this class. So a number of individuals here are going to kind of walk you through the decisions that we made. First up, we have Jen Sales from Expo. She's going to talk about the other materials that we considered for this adoption. Then we're going to have Erin Hogan. She's going to talk to you about some of the components of the next generation science standards, because I think it's critical you understand those because they drove a lot of what we were looking for in a textbook. Then Kate Linsman from West High is going to come up and talk to you about the pilot experience she had with text from the same publisher. Then we'll have Rod Wallace, department chair from East. He's going to tell you why we prefer this text over the others that we considered. And then Angela's going to round things off with the dollars. Okay, so first up, Jen Sales from Expo.
Hi, I know that you guys are looking for a quick presentation, so I'll give it a quick rundown. But basically, I wanted to let you know about the process we took to find the materials that we took, or that we got. And the first thing was first, it was kind of an individual independent research. We all kind of went out and looked for the resources. Also, Angela and Rod and I think Kate went to the NSTA meeting and they looked for resources there. And also, I want to stress the fact that we focused a lot of this in our district PLCs, where all the science teachers were involved in kind of making this decision. And so we put it out there that if they have had any resources that they wanted us to look at, that they needed to let us know too. And so we came down to about 5 different resources. We looked at the Earth Science from Pearson. We looked at HMS Science Dimensions, and that was Harcourt. We looked at Earth Science from McGraw-Hill. We looked at EarthCom from It's About Time, and we looked at EDC Earth Science from the publisher Lab Aids. We used a rubric that had been derived from the PEEC. What's the PEEC, you ask? It's the NGSS Primary Education of Essential Criteria document that they have on their website. It's a .org website, the ngss.org website, and so It's a document that it's about, I don't know, 26 pages or something, where we just basically took the items off of that and put it into a rubric. So the things that we looked at were the science and engineering practices within that book. We looked at the disciplinary core ideas, the cross-cutting concepts, the phenomena or big idea, the storyline connecting to the phenomena. And actually, I just want to stop and say that those are the two big switches right now we're looking at in our science classes, is that all these science materials we're looking at, we're trying to find a phenomena and create a storyline around that phenomena. And the phenomena can be relatively simple, like why is it raining? Well, suddenly we can talk about, evaporation and the water cycle and things like that while we learn about this phenomena, and we can create a storyline around that. We also looked at the engineering and design practices integrated with the core ideas. We looked at the multicultural aspect of things and how it can be differentiated. And we also looked at career connections and the usability of the text itself. And again, I'd like to stress, we took all of this to our whole district PLCs and made all of the science teachers that came aware of where we were headed, and tried to incorporate them as much as possible. I feel like it was a whole district team kind of decision instead of just the leadership team that we have. Erin.
Thanks, Jen.
Hi, so I am here to talk about the two things that kind of set the NGSS apart, and that is phenomena and storyline. And so just to kind of let you know what phenomena is, it's exactly what it sounds like, but it's basically how you start everything off. It's an attention grabber for the kids, but in a little bit with a bigger idea behind it. So it could be anything from a video to maybe a statistic to a picture, an activity that kind of gets the kids engaged in asking lots and lots of questions. And what you do then is once you've got their questions, you want to make sure that it links to something that affects them, to kind of get that relevance, to make it something that they care about and that they want to learn more about. It's meant to engage the students, get them thinking, and also to kind of get them, instead of thinking about that they're learning something, that they're solving a problem or figuring something out. Okay? Once you have them kind of hooked, then that's when you create that storyline. And the storyline is kind of targeted around the learning goals, or what we call the PEs, the performance expectations. And you kind of scaffold it to kind of help them answer their questions, but it all centers around that anchoring phenomena that they started with. So they're answering a question that they had, and you're scaffolding that information so that they can kind of figure out what is going on with that phenomena. So we've done a few things, I've done a few things in my classroom to give you some ideas of how I try to get the kids engaged right away. When I started DNA, structure of DNA, I had them take a strawberry, and we pulled DNA out of that strawberry. Only takes a few minutes to do. They didn't know some of them knew what it was. Most of them didn't know what it was right away. And so we asked lots of questions, and then from there, we essentially answered what's the structure of DNA, what's it made up of, all the chemicals that are in it, and I structured the rest of my lesson plans around it. We started one the other day that was really, really fun, where the students, this was on genetics, and they had a piece of PTC paper. Some people can taste it, some people can't. If you can taste it, it tastes terrible. And the kids, it's just kind of got a bitter taste to it. And it was just really interesting to see who could taste it and who couldn't. And the kids who couldn't taste it were extremely angry. They really wanted to experience, but they don't have the genes to do it. So it was really interesting. And that was just a phenomenal way, right, to get going on genetics. It was really fun. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Kate Linsman. I had the opportunity to do a pilot lesson with my physical science class at West, which was produced by the same publisher. It's about time as the EarthCom curriculum that we are trying to adopt. In this pilot, it's very set up very similar to the EarthCom, so we just kind of have a video that was made during our pilot that I thought would be a great way to show the student engagement and what we can expect to see with this similar curriculum.
should, if you push the button, it should.
That's not gonna work for this. No, it's on freeze right now.
Oh, hey.
Yep.
It was working, we know that.
There we go.
All right.
About the teaching process.
Let's learn more. Today's lesson was about the importance of airbags and how it applies to Newton's laws of motion and forces and why we have these different safety features. So the kids, they used an egg to simulate their heads and their bodies. So they had to simulate what your head does in a collision with no airbag versus airbag and maybe different materials. So like rice, flour, sugar. The definition of smash. With our old curriculum, it wasn't very inquiry. They didn't get to ask a lot of their own questions. What's different about this is there's no right answer. There's no one way to get to an answer. Gone is the day of students are like, what do you want me to put down? What's the right answer? Because it's all, no, what did you observe? What did you see? What did you think about that data? Can you explain? Teaching creativity is the highlight of this. They really do get put in the driver's seat of their own learning. So once they had kind of finished theirs, there were plenty of students who were just like, so I finished my instructions, can I do this now? And I'm like, absolutely. Total minus what?
Minus
The total that, absolutely. Yeah. With the student, they have an ultimate goal of making a safety device. So they'll have just a normal car and they will have an egg and they have to build some sort of safety device so that the egg does not smash when it collides it with the wall. Learning all of the different physics involved with forces and collisions and motion, and applying that, which is what we do all of the time, what our engineers are doing, and we're just trying to build that better machine, that better device. So it's been really cool experience. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Kyle.
So as the video did a really good job of showing, is those students were, they had some instructions in front of them, but it was really like, hey, what did you observe when you dropped this egg, and what materials made that impression less deep, and what can we learn from this? As far as like the outcomes of the pilot, I would not say any more or less students passed, but I would definitely say that engagement was there. There was a lot more, what are we going to do today? And a lot more of like,
Energy.
there was no more like, can we just do a worksheet? Because that's sometimes what I get when they walk into my classroom. Oh, do we have to? Can we just do a worksheet? But there was none of that in this pilot. So it was a lot of, oh, can we get the carts out today? Can we? And that was just really rewarding to see.
Great. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I'm Rodney Wast, content chair at East High, and the reason why we chose this curriculum is really three reasons. First of all, because the state has actually enacted a law where we have to do the PEs for the next generation of science standards, we would like to be able to do it with integrity and fidelity. And after looking at all the curriculum, this was the one text that actually followed a storyline phenomena, and is going to allow us to do this in a manner that is with great integrity. So that was the first reason. The second reason, though, is one of our district initiatives, and has been for quite a long time, is differentiation. And all these texts by It's About Time, you don't even have to differentiate. It's in the lesson. Between all the activities, between what you do as far as the journaling and all the other activities, it's in there already. You don't even have to do it. And then the third thing is another initiative that the district's had for quite a while is the literacy initiative. And we've done that in parts where we've done reading and then we focused on writing. Well, I don't know if you got to see it very much, but if you saw, each of the students had a journal right beside them, and every time they do an activity, there is journaling, every single time. So that is built right in there, and it goes right along with our district initiatives. So we just feel like, with those reasons and by looking through the rubrics, this was the best curriculum for us. So that's why we chose this one. So thank you.
So I get to wrap up with the money question. You can see in the board exhibit, $180,000 is approximately what we're asking for this adoption. $125,000 of that would cover student and teacher textbooks, but you'll see on the following page, $55,000 is for the materials needed to conduct the investigations. This is a project-based curriculum, so it's very driven by investigations. I had the teachers go through their current inventory of labware, glassware, and everything that was required to teach the investigations. So we've done a really good job of figuring out what we already have. So this amount reflects that inventory and brings the cost down to what we truly need to conduct this curriculum for the 5 chapters that the teachers chose. You'll also see the breakdown of consumable costs that would be attributed to the sections at each building. I just want to reiterate what Alex said at the beginning. These teachers on the leadership team have done an outstanding job of really investigating the curriculum choices that are out there. They take this job very seriously. They're very diligent about it. We don't always agree. We're in our meetings going back and forth, but they want to make the right decision. This is important for our kids, and they're here to make the best choice for our students. So we're happy to take any questions that you have.
Can I just ask you a clarifying question? You just said the 5 chapters that you plan to use?
Correct.
So you're not using all the chapters in the book, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head which of those 5 chapters? I mean, I think we've got a book
Yep,
over
we
here,
have the astronomy chapter, the plate tectonics chapter, the surface processes chapter, the global climate change chapter, and the Earth's natural resources chapter. And we chose those because those were most closely aligned with the requirements of the Iowa Corps.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First, as far as on those fees, you know, you checked inventory and stuff, so that would be like yearly, you're not gonna have to be getting that much more of the materials, or how does that work?
Good question. So the durable goods that you see on there at about 47,000, those are not things that would have to be replaced. So those would be used year after year.
Mhm.
It's the consumable costs that would have to be replaced, and that's for things such as potting soil or things that get used up each time you do an investigation.
So basically, 7,500 yearly for that, in addition, just for the consumable
Correct.
goods? Okay. And then my second question was, did I love it how you collaborated with the PLCs, and did any of this go to the teachers, not the leaders or the, you know, so the teachers are all aware of this and they're in support of this initiative? Because sometimes we have the teachers say, oh, I never saw it. And so I just want to make sure that the teachers were in the collaborative effort of the agreement of this program.
Yep, our monthly PLC meetings that they're referring to involve all the science teachers from all 3 high schools.
Okay.
So they spent the entire year going through the rubric with them and going through the different options. And so all teachers had an opportunity to have input. And we came to this consensus.
Great, thank you.
Is this, so you're going to more of a text structured, you know, activity with the kids during that? Is that going to be a change that you want to pursue across the other sciences as we go forward, or?
Absolutely. That's a change that the new Iowa Corps requires, that students are not just learning about science, they're doing science. So that's something we believe is best for students to learn content, is by actually engaging in those processes that scientists engage in, to the extent that that's possible in our classrooms.
I think the engagement thing is really important. Most of the chapters, I think, seem to have pretty good material. I just got a chance to peruse them. The one I would take issue with is Chapter 6, Global Climate Change. And I just passed out. I'm going to focus on one paragraph, the one on agriculture on 705, to illustrate 4 points. So I'm going to read it first. It's a short paragraph. Then I'm going to share my 4 concerns. Changes in agriculture, and this refers to the climate change, global warming, and the associated impacts. Most of the world's cropland is located in the northern hemisphere. That's true, obviously. Warmer temperatures would cause a northward shift of the regions where certain crops are grown. Agriculture would also be affected by changes in rainfall patterns. Some regions might become too dry to support present crops. Other places might become too wet to support present crops. Many areas might continue to grow traditional crops, however, the productivity decreases. In other words, farmers might still grow corn in Iowa, but produce fewer bushels per acre. An example of a change that might decrease crop productivity is an increase in nighttime temperature. Corn and other grain crops do best when the temperature drops below 70 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Another change that could reduce productivity or increase costs is a switch to wetter winters or drier summers. Okay, that sounds fairly innocuous, but if you look at the overall tone, almost every sentence is negative. So it says, and they're speculative. Other places might become too wet. Well, sure. And other places might become too dry. But some places that are currently too wet might be drier, and some that are drier become wetter. That wasn't worthy of this narrative. The other comment is the first one. That seems fairly innocuous. Most of the world's cropland is located in the northern hemisphere. Warmer temperatures would cause a northward shift of the regions. What that should read is warmer temperatures would enable an expansion northward of arable area. Most studies I've seen that, Canada and Russia would be the biggest beneficiaries because they have the most land mass that now you can grow crops on because the frost-free season has expanded away from the creator. So that's a huge expansion of land. It totally, ignores the fact that with today's technology, those areas that get drier can be irrigated very efficiently. Those that get wetter can be drained. Those are, that's been going on for thousands of years. And regarding the adaptation of some places, or the Iowa, the corn might decrease a little bit, but also if it warms up, you might get into double cropping. So, yeah, your crop might only get 90%, but you double crop because now the season allows that. We double crop not too far south from here now. But the most obvious error or omission is this whole scenario is based on some sort of optimal temperature. Nowhere could I find any inquiry as what the optimum global temperature ought to be. We know the 20th century, the average world temperature was 57 degrees. I think most agree pretty much on that number. But what should it be? If we had a dial and could dial what's the world temperature, what would we put in there? Would it be 55 or 6? Would it be 57? Would it be 58, which is what it is right now? Unless you know that, this whole scenario that features negative wording toward changes to the upward side, that's not science. We don't even have a goal. We don't know if it's good or bad. And yet we're speaking negatively of increasing. The other thing that was the last comment, the thing that's totally missing is the danger, and maybe I just missed it, maybe it's there, of global cooling. If you remember in, I think it's 1814, the eruption of Mount Tambora, 1815, there was almost no crops. And we only had 1 million people at the time. Now we got 7.5 million people. We think our carryovers are really, really big. They're 50 or 60 days. But if that were to happen, we would get no crop. What would happen? So global cooling always occurs almost immediately, is almost always much more severe in its impact. Thousands of people starve. Governments were overturned, particularly in Northern Europe. And yet there's not a mention at all of how do we prepare for a season without a summer. It froze every month of the year except one, right here in that year. And we weren't near as vulnerable because we had hay and oats and short season crops. Now we got all corn and soybeans. So can you imagine? So this scenario, I think, is more from the omission side, but also the tone has this, is aligned with the public discourse, which is sometimes more politicized science than science. So I have a real problem with with that particular paragraph and implications it has, global warming in all likelihood would not decrease agricultural production. It would greatly expand it and the opportunity. Not even to mention that carbon dioxide, in the greenhouses, near power plants where they have an option, they run 1,000 to 1,500 parts carbon dioxide for better plant growth. We're at 380 in the atmosphere. So what's the contribution of increased carbon dioxide to better productivity? And we need better productivity. A population, like I say, has gone from 1 million to 7.5 million, and it's supposed to be 9 million by 2050. So from a strategic standpoint, if we adopt this, I'll probably vote against it for that reason. But we really need to supplement a Waterloo Core addition, particularly in the agriculture area, but certainly in the Chapter 6, the global climate change area, in order to balance out some of these biases. You talk about integrity and fidelity. This section does not have that at all in my mind. But we can add that if we choose to, but it needs to be done formally. It needs to be done as part of the Waterloo Core supplement to this particular text.
And Kate, I think it was you that said, one of the things I take from that is that there are no right answers, and that, some of those challenges and some of that, I just want to address that, because I have not, I can't pull an actual paragraph, but that would be exactly the right thing, is that I wouldn't want there to be a said answer, that you would have to search for, and that there wouldn't be a bias, that you'd have to find it, and that there could be two ways to look at that situation.
Well, I think there's some accuracy to what Lyle was saying too, because if you go look at what kind of crops grow in Arizona, traditional thought would say it's a desert, you don't grow much there, yet some of the largest crops of melons, and when I was in Arizona, I saw hay being grown, and you would think that's a desert, and I actually saw cotton being grown there. So, which takes a lot of water. So, there are methodologies to get there. So, his statements are accurate that, crops can be grown in a lot of places with technology and stuff.
You can do a lot of things. The only thing you can't manipulate is the frost.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the limitation.
My question is, I get a little leery of just pulling a paragraph out of a whole chapter, Lyle. I want to see now. I want to read this whole chapter.
Right, I gotta go back and get the.
Yeah, it's bad for me that I did not read the whole chapter prior to this. But I'm just saying, sometimes when we pull things out of context,
I did it for illustration, and it was one of the ones that stuck out for me.
Yeah, but that's
They
They
want to take all night. But
yeah, but I just I hate to say that this is how it all is.
What considerations did the group have around that whole scenario I just mentioned?
Well, and I just wanted to add too, as a former science teacher, that I hope that this isn't the only. I didn't hear that this is going to be the only thing that we use to get students engaged in learning, but this would be one method. No. So,
Mr. Conyers,
right? I myself nor any of my staff have ever taught 100% out of a textbook. And I do agree with what you're saying, Mr. Schmidt, and that this text could be added to with supplemental material. I think what the paragraph represents is the status quo and the current trends we're seeing in climate and some of the possible effects of those current trends, as well as with your remark to what a drying or wetter climate could shift crops into different areas. Again, I don't think the intention of the paragraph is to speculate on what could possibly happen in the future, because that's completely uncertain. It's set to predict what may happen in the future based on what we currently see in the status quo.
But it's all in one direction. It's all negative.
Well, is there a current climate model that predicts a sudden cooling?
Lyle,
history does.
That's
the way it happens.
I don't know if your page has on the side. I'm looking at a copy of the teacher manual on the very side. Show me that side. Okay, read that very first one on the side margin, the very first thing. It says explain. You see that? This is a potential assessments for kids, and it said, number 1 says, to students, explain how ice cover and global cooling work as a positive feedback loop. So that is something, so what Sue was saying is you have to kind of look at the whole entire system. So it actually does, elsewhere in the chapter, talk about global cooling and what would be the positive feedback loop for that as an environment. So I believe, honestly, it does address both sides. Global cooling is in there.
No, that's not the context. The context is explain how existing, that's what I read into there, cover and global cooling work as a positive feedback, so that as the ice diminishes, that's a negative because you don't have that anymore. I think that's how
But
I
what
read
do
that.
they have more than the existing to base it on?
What do you mean?
You're saying history, but they're saying in the here and
Well,
now, we're using existing to be our baseline.
If Yellowstone or any dramatic volcano is going to decrease the temperature in 1915 decreased by 4 degrees, from 57 to 53, and it was just devastating. And the same thing would happen. There's no reason to believe that the same level of a volcanic eruption, putting the same level of stuff in the air, wouldn't have the same effect. We just, because it's sudden and unpredictable, it seems like we would be totally off guard. You know, this should be affecting the amount of carryover food we have, because that possibility exists. You know, it was 200 years ago, but 1 in 200, if it's going to kill millions of people, is still worth addressing from a public policy standpoint. So I don't think we can ignore.
But an entry-level science courses is like a 9th grade science course. We want to introduce them and have them explore the fact that this might be something they would look at and look at these different options. They're not going to be able to solve our crisis in 9th grade.
It should be an element of inquiry in any science course. I don't see it in here. It might be.
Well, let me just say I'm super excited. I know that here in America that we are dealing with a bleeding, if you will, of STEM. So I think for 9th grade science, we do have to look at historical timelines are very important, but I also think geopolitical is important as well, because demography, economics, geography, all of that impacts how our world is going to be changing. And so from a political perspective, we do need to look at things about environmental conservation. We do need to look at emissions, and we need to look at those variables to see if they do impact or do not. So in addition to looking at the historical timelines, I was very impressed by the way, and I know you're an engineer, Lyle, but we do need to help our students think critically and come up with solutions. And so we do need to present them with those geopolitical realities. We need to look at demography, how our world is changing globally, how people are harvesting food, how we are creating and developing food. So I look forward to this, and I don't know if this is a pilot project, but
it's potentially a very rich and very interesting area of discussion. I mean, it could just be.
Well, and part of that kind of plays into a little bit, the difference between science and engineering you get into, this is a very science-based, but then engineering is, more of the adaptations about and evolution about. So, evolving our technologies and our...
Just the question of what's the optimal temperature. That depends on where you're coming from. So,
it's based on the status quo. It's not based on an optimal temperature. It's based on current average temperatures.
But where do we want to go? I mean, everything is based on slowing down temperature growth, temperature rise. We don't even know if that's directionally correct.
That's because the current trend in the status quo is warming.
Yeah.
So I think it's relevant to talk about effects of warming.
But
I would also encourage you, Lyle, to look at page 219, where they talk about the effect of volcanic eruptions on the climate. So, it is in there.
And
I mean, I didn't know that off the top of my head. I went to the index of the book and found that. You should understand that. I don't know the book front to back, but I do love this curriculum, and I think it is absolutely what our students in Waterloo need. And they need exposure to this information. They need exposure to both sides of the information, Lyle. I completely agree.
And there's only one side here, so I'm proposing the other side be an official part of the curriculum.
Go ahead, Mike.
So-
I'm sorry.
Well,
If
Well,
you
what-
look
what would it
earlier
take?
in the chapter,
Right.
there are plenty graphs of historical record of temperatures in which students are supposed to make the connection that you're trying to make here, which is that we might be headed for an ice age. That's made very clear in section 1 and 2 of this, in which they actually specifically look at graphs of average temperature for what we've recorded.
As teachers,
And explain how they find that information as well.
Right. As the teachers are exposed to this curriculum and this book, those discussions can be had amongst staff, in which you would want to mention these things, and to not necessarily take a lot of what is written as absolute truth, and that we don't know what's going to happen. And as long as the teachers are using that adaption with teaching the class, I'm not a person that wants to see political views pushed onto science classes either. So as long as that's adhered to, I would be fine with what we have.
Yeah, I don't believe
proposed.
that this is a political view. It approaches it from a data-oriented standpoint.
Well, there is some conjecture of how that data has come about and how accurate that data is as well. So.
There always is.
Right.
There
I mean,
always
there-
is.
there
I
is
don't
in
pick a
every
topic.
textbook.
What I really like about the text is within it, it does discuss the limitations of the computational models and talks about how they have been revised and updated numerous times as they don't reflect what is happening or what they predicted would happen. The scientists adjust and revise their computer models to make them more and more accurate every year.
Why I think it's important that we do look at content. I think the more important thing that this curriculum has given our students is an ability to think in a different way, which they can apply across curriculum and other things too. So they can apply it then as they go further into sciences and things like that. I think that this particular model that they're bringing to us allows students to learn to think on their own and think more critically than if we were not to do this. So someone may look at this paragraph as a result of this curriculum and be like, this whole paragraph is negative. Can we look at this from a different perspective? If we looked at it from this perspective, it could, because it's teaching our kids to think in that way, is what I am hearing from the curriculum that I based on.
My objection is, it is negative. It shouldn't be negative. It should be balanced, and it's not. And so now it's up to someone else's initiative to balance it, and that may very well happen.
Right.
But all I'm saying is we need to make that part of the curriculum to at least entertain the idea of balancing out this paragraph.
Would a Canadian not look at the first sentence of that paragraph and see it as an optimistic thing? It talks about effects to the status quo, which is my point. If the effects, I mean, they're not negative for every area of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a dual citizen, I'm feeling pretty good about the current situation. It's going to affect our hockey rinks, but I'm feeling the technology is going to push us forward. Hey, I think obviously we can all be constrained by a certain vantage point, and I appreciate that science is located in culture. The scientific method is a culture that we continue to have to reflect upon, that we continue to have to take alternative stances to shed light on what is and what may be and what was. But let me speak about the process. It is such an honor to work with you and how inclusive a process you brought to the table. And I've been at your science committee, and it was a very interesting experience, thinking more about what could happen to Canada in the hockey rinks. but you were critical with me, you were passionate with me, and your openness to different points of view, to me, is what makes me stand with you. We'll always find areas that can be improved. And I trust in you that you will do that, because one of the things that we've done in this district is we've become more system-oriented. Every high school teacher has been part of this process. And I guarantee you that we will have to adapt, add curriculum, add information as science advances. So again, I want to thank you. And again, I'm just going to start reeling in where my investments are going to go, and I appreciate that.
I think, Charles, your statement very good. And in fact, what would a science book like science textbook look like 100 years ago? You know, you look how far technology come. 100 years ago, some things that we're talking about now would never be thought of. So, it is somewhat of a moving target as technology and change, as we learn more and more about our universe. So.
And lastly, I just want to say, with respect to that paragraph, the interesting thing is that it used different modals of certainty by saying might, may, could. Yeah. And the interesting thing about using those modals of certainty is that we are not certain. And so I think with the passage that you selected, Lyle, that speaks to that these science teachers have acknowledged the fact that there are different thoughts, ideas about those geopolitical things. But again, if we just focus on this one passage, that those modals of certainty are might, could, may, some regions might become. And so that allows for us to have critical thought. And for science ninth graders who hopefully will consider science, technology, engineering, or math to come up with some of those solutions and use those different modals of certainty to answer these questions.
And I think for me, like when you first came, my concern was it is pushed.
You're good.
What was the rigor? I was like, oh my gosh, you're taking away the rigor, because
No.
earth science to me is boring. But like that's just, and I think that you came back with a very good model that like convinces me that there's still going to be rigor.
More rigor.
Even though, right, it's more rigor. Again, teaching kids a way of thinking critically that's going to go across curriculum. I'm super excited to hear kind of this book.
And I've stayed fairly silent, but I think probably the point that Alex made probably hit home the most for me is it's written on status quo for what you're growing right now. So what you're growing right now may not be what you grow. So maybe you'll grow what somewhere south of here grew. I mean, we don't know that. And that may be a great thing. Maybe there's more money in that than there is in soybeans or corn at that point in time. So I think it warrants repeating. So thank you for that point. And it's just a resource. Debbie Lee has been in front of us a billion times, and every time she says textbooks are a resource. They do not look at page 1 to see what they're teaching that day. They look at it for a resource, and they draw in newspaper articles, journal, whatever. So.
Well, and I would hope that it is not the tell-all. I mean, we want our teachers to teach the way they want to teach and not be restricted to this is exactly what I have to say.
Right. As Mr. Conyer said, I don't think I've ever used every single word out of a textbook.
And the thing I like about it is I think it is with your video and the engagement. I had a 9th grade boy that hated science. And if he could have done this, I think it would have maybe stemmed the tide that he would have liked it better. So I think that this isn't you're exploring in 9th grade science. It's not like you're saying you're going to be a scientist. But you might want to be a scientist after you have the hands-on application, I think. So.
Or progress into other CTE classes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that project-based, we've all been talking about that, how important that is. So we could probably sit up here for another hour and keep talking. So is everybody all right if I call the question and okay, excellent. I do want to say before we go, thank you to all of you for coming tonight and presenting to us and answering all of our questions. This is such good discussion. It's so important, and we never want to put you guys on the spot, but we did put you on the spot. So I just appreciate it very much, because clearly we all care. So with that, we've got this motion on the table. So all those in favor of approval of the Earth Comm Science curriculum, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thank you. That takes us then to the next item on our agenda, which is item J. And this is our budget certification adoption. And the recommended motion is the Board of Education certify and adopt the 2017-18 budget with maximum expenditures of $163,692,104 and a property tax level rate of $14.98. I'm going to start over. $14.98155 as presented. I don't even know how to say that beyond 98
So
cents.
moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thanks. And with that, I'll turn over to Michael Coughlin, and we can talk about tax rate. Yes.
Well, we spent quite a bit of time on the details of how these numbers are generated, and I tried to put in just parts of the exhibit that you could refer back to. It is the law that by April 15th, and this year it's April 17th because of the weekend, that every school district has to have their budget approved to the state and to the county as far as levying taxes for the next school year. So at this time, in the middle of April, we are approving the budget for the 17-18 school year. And on page 37 is just some of the critical components that go into that, and starts out with student enrollment, starts out with the cost per pupil that the state applies in the funding formula, and that's what they deliberate about each year, of how much increased that the state can afford to give school districts, with then the money that generates, because our budget is always started with calculating all the revenues, and then you apply the expenditures to that. We can't just decide how much we want to spend and then tax to bring in that much money. It goes the other direction. We are bound by formula from these components, basically by student enrollment, that dictates the revenue that we can collect. And then we shape our expenditures to match that. And again, it's all broken down by each of the funds that are listed. The general fund, which is the main fund operating the district, the activity fund for students, groups and athletics, the management fund that deals with property and liability insurance and workers' comp, and if and when the district had early retirement plans for retiring teachers, that was also funded through that. And then you get into capital projects, where we have the 1 cent sales tax, and we have the physical plant and equipment levy, and that's based on the 33 cents that the board can approve each year. And then every 10 years, the public has to vote on additional, and it can be up to $1.34, but ours is 67 cents. So between the two types of PEPL levies, 33 cents and 67, that's $1 of taxes. And then the debt service is just a fund that we transfer money out of the SAVE revenue, the penny sales tax, to pay off debt that we have. It's not additional revenue. It's just shifted from Fund 33 into 40 to make the bond payments. And then we had food service as the last fund, which is a self-sustaining enterprise that is through student fees and state and federal reimbursement. So on page 38 is the exhibit that was posted in the paper as the proposed budget, and that is a culmination of all the funds together. When you look at the revenues in the top section for the actual of last year of 15, 16, the re-estimated for the current year, and the budget year for upcoming 17, 18. So this is a combination of all the funds put together in one column for the year, and has the revenues at the top and the expenditures at the bottom. Now when you look on the next page of 39, that tells you where the taxes are being generated from. Line 8 is the general fund, $13.42. Line 10 is the management fund, 55 cents. And line 16 is the dollar for PEPL. So the total of all of those is the $14.98.155. And I'm not sure if that's the right way to say that either, but that's why I always round it off to $14.98. And it is notable to say that this is a drop from last year of $15.40. The basic reasons for that is there was a drop in enrollment, which the formula then generates a little less money for need. And also with that, we had a lower state supplemental increase. So we got less of an increase, less students, but our valuation went up about as it normally does, about 2%. So that whole combination creates a little less revenue. It went down about $200,000 from last year totally, and the valuation went up. So that drives our tax rate down. So that's the main purpose of why that happened. When you look at page 40 and 41, that's a breakdown of the combined exhibit on page 38. That breaks out all the funds and tells you how that's all split out. And then on page 42 is kind of a new, how many years? This is the third year, I believe, that commercial and industrial, it's been an effort by basically headed by the governor and the legislature that to lower property tax for businesses. So commercial and industry, the state used to charge 100% of valuation that they would charge taxes on. They dropped it the first year to 95% and then to 90%, and it's staying at 90%. So yes, this is the third year that they've calculated it. But if you look kind of right in the middle of the page, there's a bar, highlighted bar that says 90%. What happens is when they got to 90%, they said, okay, we're going to lock in this amount of money. And even if the valuation goes up and calls for more commercial and industry tax break contribution, we can't go above that pot of money each year. So instead of getting 90% of what the calculation is, I'm guessing it's going to be between 90 and, instead of 100%, I'm sorry, of the calculation, I'm guessing it's going to be around the 95 and maybe down to 90. It just depends on how much valuation changes across the state for property or for commercial and industry. But that's where that is calculated, which in our situation, that tax break is generating $1.4 million that the local taxpayers are not paying. The state is picking that up. So it's making it more attractive for a business to move into a community because the tax rate has been decreased. Now you can argue both sides of the coin with that, of what that does to the whole state economic situation, the revenue estimating committee that comes in, estimates that come in, but what does it do to bring business into the community? And we've seen growth in that as well. So there's arguments on both sides of the coin, but that has been a primary focus of the governor in the last 3 years. And then on page 43 is the summary of the 4 bonds that we have currently outstanding and the payments that we need to contribute to that this year. And then how much of the principal is due this year and what the payment is with the interest, and then shows what the original issue of that bond was. Now this is a little bit different, this year because of the refinancing of the big bond, and we've talked about that a couple of different times. So this kind of gives you the critical components that make up the information of where does the maximum expenditures come from. Well, it comes from the revenue we're able to generate through formula. And where does the tax rate come from? From that formula, then it's generated out how much is state aid, how much is property tax, and then is applied to what our valuation has changed, and that gives us our new tax rate. So all of it is bound by very strict formula that comes with those certain criteria, and it's basically student enrollment. What the state gives us for an increase in the year and what our valuation does, which then generates the tax rate. So if you have any questions.
Michael, I just wondered, what would you attribute the drop in the food service? You know, that was pretty close to 900,000 difference from 16-17, lower than 17-18?
They are estimates.
Okay.
And one of the things that sometimes there's some evolution, that's not really a term I like to use, but an evolution of how you estimate things and you budget, and what is put in there for this year is probably closer to what actual will be, rather than putting some conservative cushion in there. We don't expect a lot of change. It's just the way that the revenue is, how the expenditures is reported. And probably with food service, I should have reduced the estimate for this year a little bit. But that doesn't have anything to do with the tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but yes,
No.
it has dropped a little bit just because of trying to get a more realistic estimate of what's actually going to happen.
Okay.
Rather than kind of a like conservative inflation.
Right, because
for
I
that
guess
fund.
my question would be, food prices typically go up, not down, you know,
Right.
so, yeah, thank you.
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, a lot of the things, you know, the impact of petroleum, different things can drive prices up and down, and we haven't been really in a bad case as far as petroleum prices to impact food. Meat prices came down, so those things.
Not only have the prices changed, but some of the school lunch programs have been cut as well. So I think that legislatively, a lot of that will impact our school lunch budget.
So if they were cut, would that not mean we'd have to pay more? You know, I guess.
Anything further? It's always nice to see a drop in the tax rate, so very happy about that. So, right, total askings, exactly. Yes, yes. And I'm happy with the valuations keep coming. Do we need a roll call? No? Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing further for Mr. Coughlin, then all those in favor of approving the recommended motion on the 17-18 budget and the tax levy rate, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. That is the end of our action items for tonight. We'll move on then to Exhibit K, which is an update on our district strategic plan. And I know that Mr. McNulty, Dr. McNulty, I think you're gonna start the show off, but I'm not exactly sure who else. I see some of my favorite peeps out here, so we'll see.
Well, I certainly won't be alone,
I
and
figured.
although there seems to be a suggestion that would be a good idea, but we'll have a very effective dialogue after this, and I think we'll be all on the same page.
Great.
First off, thank you, and Dr. Lindman has asked us to share our piece of the strategic plan PACE, people, achievement. And if you take a look at the purple folders, unless I'm colorblind now, which would be a different color, in that would be the first page. And you will see the weight of our section of the strategic plan achievement.
Ooh, this is blurry. Did you make this one the one you crank out the purple and blue? No.
It's all about budget reductions.
I was like, doesn't it look like the old?
So as we move forward, and again, I'm just going to say I don't have my reading glasses with me, although I probably don't need any. So as you look at achievement, our job, our role within our school district is to increase achievement for all students through rigorous curriculum, high expectations, and effective delivery of instruction with assessment for improving teaching and learning. Increased learning. And so that's a monumental task. And when I stepped into this role, I had an outstanding conversation with Mr. Schmidt, who says, what's going to be different? And I think that was the challenge that we're looking for. What is going to be different when we work our children within our school district? And so if you look down to the 3 areas of goals that we surround our work, increase the percentage of students proficient in math, literacy, and science, because right now that's what the state is measuring. They will start measuring more. And I think our school report card is starting to delve into different sections, which I am very welcome. I think No Child Left Behind set us maybe a limitation in what our laser-like focus was, rather than looking at the whole school or the whole child. We're accelerating the learning for all students while narrowing the achievement gap with historically marginalized student populations. And most importantly, we have to create 21st century schools. Now, as you see below it, the pay for performance metrics, there are a number of them under our educational services wing. And again, the question is, how do you address so many metrics? And our approach has been creating a system. And a system of collaborative work, very similar to what you heard in the science committee. That often in districts, what you have happen is a few people make choices for the many, and then you lose commitment. You lose the ability to build capacity, and you also then lose the ability to measure if you're being effective, because you don't have people having a stake in the process. So here's the charge for tonight. We're going to spend about 10 minutes, but we will be at your beck and call as a group, and they will tell you who they are, so you can email them when you want specifics. And we will be able to provide any information you like regarding the details. I can tell you our planning process. We can drill down into a professional learning community at Lou Henry and know what their discussion was yesterday. Well, let's say last Thursday. Yesterday would be a tough day. But let me say this. I get reports on when people are working on their school improvement plans, and it's not every weekend I get reports that feedback that people are working on their plan, 10 to 15 changes a weekend. So this is very much engaged across the district. So if you look at the next page, this is a screenshot of really our communication resource tool that was co-created by, we have such a great tech department. I mean, let's just call them out here. And teachers and administrators. So what we can do with this tool, with this search engine, with its labels, is you can see what every school is doing and their goals for the year. You can take a look at every action item, what they're doing at each month, what they intend to do the next month, and what is their evidence of success. Google is a wonderful tool, because you can drill down to things that we could never drill before through using links. And the great piece of this is we don't have to tell people to standardize our approach, because we can use links through this search engine. if you look at the three areas right under district improvement plans, are federal and intertwined, there's three concepts I want to draw your attention to. The notion is, and a lot of this is taken from organizational theory. Education is typically a conservative venture. Organizations, entrepreneurship have led us to innovation. And so as we're looking to, again, be innovative but have a foundation, we've kind of drawn from what top businesses are doing. So one notion is sociocracy, and that is having people, it's like work groups. I think Deere probably does this, where you take work groups, you give them a task and a role, and you set them free with an outcome, an end in mind. We've done that. We want to empower professionals to make decisions, but the end in mind has to be clear and specific, and it has to be labeled and addressed in our school improvement plans. The right drivers came out of a gentleman called Leithwood, and he was talking about how we have to end a deficit view of how we teach, but have a more progressive and positive outlook on our professionals. So he's looking to foster intrinsic motivation. He believes that's what our schools should do with our professional staff and our students. He's looking into engage educators in continuous improvement. This district has been part of continuous improvement for years. He's looking to have collective teamwork, and we're going to talk about professional learning communities. And his suggestion is we have to affect everybody. Not just those who we think should be making decisions, but everybody. And finally, it's the end in mind. We want to make sure that every child, no matter what race, class, language, disability, sexuality, gets treated with fairness and is the center of what we do. And that's our commitment, that's our moral commitment to the state of Iowa, to the community of Waterloo, and to us as professionals. And so what you'll see is, and we're going to provide this as an electronic document, and there's a link to one of our professional developments. I think it's November 2016, and if I am wrong, I apologize right now. But it talks about, I think what we were talking about during the science discussion, the notion of implicit bias. We as professionals always have good intent, but sometimes we don't, which is implicit bias, know that we may have a disposition or a point of view that works counter to what we want to have happen. And so it is about talking, it is about discussing, it's about uncovering through inquiry and self-reflection what's really happening based on the data. And that's been a big push in our district with our administrators, our coaches, and will continue to be centered on the work. And you'll see some tools that we use for that. Given that, and my introduction, Stephanie Morhorn, who is Director of Middle Schools and also works with the TLC process, is going to talk about distributive leadership and our walkthrough tool. Let me talk about the director's roles. Traditionally, directors supervise somebody within their field. Their job is to manage the strategic planning process, to not just hold people accountable, but to create a support system for our schools. So as we talk about that communication and resources, what resources do we need? So for example, if Lou Henry needs more support in our ELL students because we have students from the Congo coming in, we have to provide services and support, and that's Mr. Hanna's role as Director of Elementary Education. So, Ms. Mohorn?
As Charles has talked about with distributive leadership, that is a huge push that our whole district, and especially those of us in ed services, are working towards. I will say that what we saw tonight with the science team was a perfect example of teachers really making decisions for themselves and things being solved at the, as Charles says, closest to the classroom level. Traditionally, decisions like a new science curriculum may have come from downtown, as we're sometimes called, where teachers wouldn't know until after the fact. That those days are gone. We have 4 committees, 4 content committees, our literacy, math, science, and social studies committees, and they really have the decision-making power to do things such as curriculum, different tools that they're using, classroom walkthroughs, lots of different things. So I think that was a prime example of what we're trying to do and really including our teachers. And we want things to not be done to our teachers, but really involve them in the decision-making process. With that said, with our 4 content curricular, we also have 4 content curricular leaders. We have a literacy, math, and social studies, and actually Anjali Myers, who is here, she is our science content curricular leader. That is a new position this year. And so we really, even though she is a teacher leader, she still is a teacher. And so that is just, we are showing that although administrators are part of these teams, it really is the teachers and teacher leaders that have the ownership of those teams. Our PLCs, last April, our lead teachers, assistant principals, and principals sat together and made non-negotiables for each level with our PLCs. We know that our PLCs are our highest leverage point that we have. That's that time we have with teachers where we can talk about student achievement and instruction. And so elementary has their set of non-negotiables. We do for middle school, and high school does as well. And we have really referred back to those. If our PLCs seem to be going off track, we refer back to those non-negotiables. We look building by building and PLC by PLC. I will say, I'll speak for my middle school. We're not exactly where we need to be in all PLCs, just like everything. We have some at the highest functioning level, and we have some that still have work to do. But that is something that we are really focusing on because we know that can have a high impact for our students. If you'll look, also, the walkthrough tool. This is something that was created by teacher leaders and administrators. There's a copy of it on the next page where it's called the Focused Instruction Tool. In the past, we've looked at what are teachers doing. We go in to do classroom observations, we give feedback to teachers on teacher actions. We have really changed that because we know the impact is what are students doing? What are they engaging in? What are the questions that they are asking? And so this walkthrough tool was created by a group, and this really focuses on what are students doing when we go into classrooms. This is really what we're doing to focus on that equity. When we walk into classrooms and look to see, we can look, who are the students that aren't engaged in the lesson? Do they have some commonalities? If so, what can we do? What can we do to coach that teacher? What can we do to bring it to that teacher's attention? What are we looking for? This really is one of our tools that we use to focus on equity when we are going into classrooms. And this is used by coaches and administrators. So it's used by everyone that does classroom walkthroughs. And speaking with walkthroughs, Charles, I'm going to let you still talk about the Charles eyeball. I'm just going to.
So obviously I'm talking about the graph we have there, which looks like an eyeball. And there is solid and dotted lines. And focused instruction, which is really based upon assuming students can do the work, so it's high expectations, deep content knowledge, a rapid pace of instruction, okay, and then one of the key elements of that also is that our depth of knowledge is always addressed in our instructional tool. So if you notice historically, if you do focused instruction, you have achievement, and that's that solid line between focused instruction and achievement. What this is showing that traditionally, our minority students or our students with free and reduced lunch don't get focused instruction. It's not that they aren't capable, it's just that our institutions don't provide focused instruction. And so that's the big push we have in this district. We've developed strong curriculum over the years, we have talented people, but now we just have to be intentional about ensuring everyone gets that focused instruction. And I've talked about the tool, it's very simple. So you go in, you make some comments regarding what the students are supposed to be doing based upon what the professional learning community, the teachers want the students to do, and it emails right to the teacher right away. And then you discuss it at the next professional learning community. It's not a gotcha, it's, hey, this is what we saw, was that what you wanted? Which is a critical reflection. It's really back to the business model. You create a prototype, did the prototype work like we intended? And if it didn't, we have to recalibrate and reshift and go back to the drawing board, but the recalibration and then try again. So there we go. Stephanie, thank you so much for that.
And I want to say with this tool also, we have been revising it all year based on feedback from teachers, administrators, coaches, those that are using it and those that are getting the feedback from the coaches and the administrators. So this is where we're at right now, but this is a work in progress. We're constantly seeking that feedback and getting feedback from people so that we can make it better.
And Steph, you're referencing the next page, right? The
Yes,
six.
Yes, this
Could-
is the actual
Okay.
tool.
Yep.
Could I make a comment? Just
Go turn to the next page.
Can I make just comment real fast?
Sure.
I was just gonna say I had a school visit today and I had an opportunity to see this in action. I was actually pretty impressed by that. And it's the first time I had seen that. Like, okay, this is what we use. I got visit to 2 or 3 classrooms with the administrator and taking his notes and then so this is the tool we use and how we provide feedback. And I was really impressed by that. So, and he explained some of the refinement you have done, to create our own internal model and different things to use that. So, for all the district staff who worked on that, I was pretty impressed by that. So.
I'm Darren Hanna. I'm the Director of Elementary Education. And so my part of this presentation dealt with some of the achievement gains we've seen in the elementary. And so I'm starting on the page with the green boxes. Okay, so last year we were part of the state's differentiated accountability, their new model. We were one of the pilot schools of the big schools. They came in, we worked intensively with 3 elementary schools looking at healthy indicators within the system they're building. At that time, they had FAST identified, which was the early reading screening. Okay, and so we looked at what our processes were around that. Going into that pilot, we were designated as intensive, which meant they had lots of concerns about what they were seeing in our data. Okay, and so they came in, we were 3 full days with the state, 3 elementary schools worked with them. By the beginning of this year, we had been downgraded, if that's what a term I can use, from intensive to targeted because of the work they saw in the professionals that were in the room. We have built strong systems across the elementaries now. And so what you're looking at is IGDs, okay, Individual Growth Development Indicators. That is the screening tool required by the state for the preschool, for pre-K. Okay, and I have Dr. Sudduth and our coach, Jill Wackel here. Awesome job. I mean, they went through, trained the teachers, got everybody there. They were recognized within that pilot as an exemplar because they were able to get everybody trained. We are now fully implementing IGDs, and we did it in 6 months. 6 months. Okay, so what you're looking at, and if you have questions, they're better to answer them than I am. But if you look at where we're at, you're looking at the fall screening on the top, and then the winter screening. Okay, and these are foundational reading pieces that deal with IGDs. They're not transferable not straight across to FAST, what they will take in kindergarten, but they're pretty close. They have some indicators. So when you're looking across there, you're seeing the scores. So the composite is on the left. The second one is the, help me out, Charlotta, picture naming. Yep, sound identification. Which one doesn't belong is the start of comprehension, okay? And then rhyming, and then we add the first sounds in at the winter. Okay, so you can see nobody was doing cartwheels in the fall. No, we were not doing cartwheels in the fall. So they worked really, really hard as a PLC, and you can see the growth they had between fall and winter. Huge growth. Okay, kindergarten teachers everywhere in Waterloo are going, yes, 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 right? Because they know that those kids are going to start coming into kindergarten with some of the things that we're spending our first couple months on, that coming from our pre-K, they're going to have those things, okay? That way we can just start moving stuff down the line. So big kudos to the pre-K staff. We're really anxious to see what we have in the spring. But they've been working really intensely on helping kids get those foundational skills before they even get into kindergarten.
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
IGD stands for Individual
Growth Development Indicators.
Indicators.
And then they put I think, apostrophe S on it to get, so it has something that's catchy, like IGDs.
Okay.
Okay, and it is, we are required to do that, but we were one of the first ones to get up and running with it in all of our preschools, which was very impressive to the state. Okay. The second sheet, which
Darren, what percentage of our kindergartners or our pre-K do we screen? What percentage?
95. Well, in our pre-K programs,
in our programs,
95-ish, somewhere between 95
wow.
and 100%.
So this is not just a sampling.
Oh no, this is all pre-K basically. Yes. Okay. The next sheet is the FAST results. Okay, so it looks like that. We were recognized by the state. Waterloo had the largest growth in students who met benchmark on the FAST, the CBM reading test. That was the one that we use it within FAST. You can see that last year we grew 15% as far as kids who met benchmark, and this is grades K through 3. Okay, largest of all the UEN schools. Okay, and then you can see the top one is fall to spring, so that would have been last year. If you look down, then sometimes we look at cohort groups and we go fall to fall. Fall to fall has the summer in there. So you start to see what summer does, and that's our next emphasis point, is what we can do through the summer. Because you can see we start lower than we end the spring. But I know by January we were up 6 points again. So again, I'm hopeful double digit again this year. Staff is working extremely hard. Our literacy coaches and our PLCs are just all over this one in bringing together a balanced approach with comprehension. So those are some really good indicators. And again, as Jane had said before, we're screening probably 98% of all K through 6. Okay, especially with I deal with elementary K through 5. We're screening 95 to 98% of those kids. All of those kids who don't get who don't meet the benchmark on the screening are being progress monitored weekly, and those who are still struggling are receiving an intervention that's being progress monitored. So teachers are working really hard on this, and we've seen a really nice momentum booster. We're getting a little wind in our sails because they're working really hard, but now they're starting to see the fruits of that labor.
So are these
What's next?
Yeah, we're not. Did you have a question?
So is this a different, this fall to spring?
Yep, it's the same test. It's where we draw the growth from. Most of the time you will look fall to spring to see what the effect of the year's instruction was, but then they also look fall to fall. That gives us some idea of what happens during the summer. And for kids, a lot of our kids, kids in poverty, those things, summer has a really detrimental effect on reading and math. And that's why we're turning our attention to what can we do to strengthen those skills during the summer, so kids aren't starting, behind where they are. Not atypical. I've been in the district where we gave maps 3 times a year. We would find the same thing. We would usually teach till October-ish to get back to where we were in May.
But the other districts don't have the same follow-up, if I'm reading this
No.
correct.
Nope.
So if summer is the reason, they have summer too.
Yep. And it depends on what these are K through 3, so you have to look at your populations. You also have to look at where you're at. So for us, we're on the uphill climb, right? We're making progress up the mountain. Once we get things stabilized up where it should be, then you're going to see that also drop off.
Are these checking the same kids, or is it the next grade?
No, this would be those kids.
Same kids are tested again.
Fall to spring, and then fall to
Cohort.
fall. And within the system, we have the ability to track and we do track all of that. And I'm confident that if you went to a PLC, they would tell you exactly what every kid was and how they were doing. That's how closely we monitor.
Lyle, were you talking about spring to fall comparisons across the districts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the districts see the 3 to 4 points loss or whatever, and some do not. And so typically, I mean, that's something we're watching too. So if you're looking at Davenport or Dubuque or of Des Moines, you're going to see some of that slide as well. But there are districts that don't see that slide during the summer.
Yep.
And so that's part of the work for summer school programs that we're looking at to not have that summer slide. Yeah, I thought that's what I understood you asking.
How do we account for a new student into a district?
When they transfer in,
Or they're new to, say...
New to the state would be one thing, right? They
or
wouldn't have
new to state, country...
Within the state, it's statewide. So as soon as they show up, their pass score shows up. If they transfer within the district, as soon as infant and campus, enrolls them, they get it. So we would have scores for kids that come from different districts within Iowa. We would not have scores for kids outside of Iowa who would not have taken the assessment. However, when they come in, we can test them out of window so that we at least get a baseline score.
Okay, so those will get added into. So if we get new students in the fall that come from somewhere outside Iowa, they don't get into.
If they come after the screening window, which is like 3 weeks long, we can test them. So let's say September pretty much we're covered. Let's say they show up in October, we can test them out of window to get a baseline, but then we'll pick them up in January and in.
Right. So you'll get, but you won't have a fall to fall for them.
No, we won't have a fall to fall.
And so that doesn't get counted into the fall percentages. So.
It does take into effect the mobility we have within our own district and this part of the state because all the schools are required to do this.
How do we? So I mean, looking at UENs, and I don't really know this. I mean, Dr. Lee, you can speak to this. Maybe is how do these other districts compare in terms of where we're at on ELLs compared to Waterloo versus say like a Marshalltown, which has a huge.
And again, we can break those out because within the system, those filters are already in the system.
Okay.
You have some issue with ELL depending on what assessment you give. We're still working on that. If you give a fluency probe, so in English is my second language, fluency is a little tougher and down the road. We can then test them on a reading, which is not a fluency probe, and then we can choose to use that assessment instead because it's more appropriate.
Now, I have a question as far as Angie and I were kind of looking at it, and we are like, Waterloo is like 10% lower just starting of any other UEN districts, with Des Moines being next. So is it an attribute to we didn't have good pre-K previously and we do now? Or what do we attribute that? I mean, because all these other UEN towns have poverty, they have ELL, they have,
So the assessment that we're giving is a screener, and it is measuring something different than what we traditionally measure. Okay, we have been a PCL model and heavy on comprehension, but not as strong on foundational skills. Okay, so this one does not measure comprehension. This is just foundational skills. So it looks at phonological awareness. It looks at fluency. It looks at those things that are indicators as to whether a student has solid decoding skills, can read the text. Okay, doesn't deal with if they can do something with the text, because that comes, again, the philosophy is I can't understand what I can't actually read. Okay, so we're working on that.
And I would just like to say that we only serve maybe 60% of all incoming kindergartners into our pre-K programs. So
what are the other districts? Are they more 80, 90, or?
No, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you that, and I really don't even have the piece of paper that you're looking at. But
it's not pre-K. This is
K to
fast test.
3.
Okay.
K through.
I just wanted to say when you said pre-K, I just wanted to make sure that we only serve at least 60% of all incoming kindergartners, and that's at the high.
Okay.
And
so some of them don't even get preschool at all.
One of the other factors to look at within this is how long you've been in the system. Last year was the first year that all elementary schools did this. Okay, I'm going to venture a guess that if you look at most of the other UEN schools, they would have been the year prior to that. So they had 1 year in the test. Again, once we look at the results and start analyzing them, it starts to influence instruction. Okay, and so for us now, these results, along with our other assessments, are influencing our instruction. The key message that we want everybody to take away from this is our kids can do this, right? There is absolutely no reason why our kids aren't right where and above everybody else's kids, and we believe that, and it's starting to happen. That's the important piece. The data that's gained from this is having an impact on instruction. The instruction is having an impact on achievement. Okay, the fact that can work is what puts some wind in the sails of teachers, right? We're going to work really hard, and yet we're going to see kids start to grow and go. Okay?
So from this, can I conclude that in terms of the third grade qualification, that we'd only have half our third graders prepared for third grade?
This is K through 3, not just third grade. So the results you're looking at would be a combination of all the kids that were in kindergarten through third grade. Okay? And of those, so if we look at the spring of 2016, Lyle, and you look at 52%, we would have had 52% make the benchmark on that assessment. The state average was probably, I don't quote me exactly, but was in the 60s somewhere, probably upper 60s. So even within the state, they're trying to recalibrate the assessment because they're only getting 66, 68% of the kids across the state. If you put all the state in a pile and said, okay, what percentage of kids met the benchmark in K through 3, you're going to get somewhere around 65 to 70%. So yes, are we where we need to be? Absolutely not. Are we making gains towards it? Yes, we are.
And the benchmark again is?
Depends on the grade, right? So each grade has different tests that are that layer on top of each other for having fluent readers for us into third grade, because that's where the mark is set as to whether kids are reading at grade level or not.
So this is just reading?
This is just fluency. It's not comprehension.
Yeah, it's just that one fast test.
Just that one piece. Fluency has about an 80% accuracy on predicting outcomes on a standardized test. And I can go up, down, up, down. I can do this all day long. So anytime you guys want to come by, I got file upon file upon file. We can talk reading, all right? Thank you.
Now it's my turn. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about CFAs. And one of the things, and that's at the very bottom of the gargantuan amount of data that Darren was talking about. So first of all, you need to know what that means. That means common formative assessment. So when we look at formative assessment, it's a check on progress. It's a check right now, and it informs instruction right now. And when we call it common, it means that the same assessment is done across multiple teachers. Generally, that is within the PLCs, the professional learning communities. In our case as well, it is cross-district. So our CFAs are cross-district, grade level, content level, and they're working in all areas. We have CFAs in music now, we have CFAs in our literacy and our math. We continue to work on them in science and social studies and get those up to par, so they're everywhere. And what they do is they're used, again, to improve instruction and to ensure that all students learn the inspected outcomes. They allow teachers to check that student progress, and then they collaborate around the student performance. So the teachers have the discussions about what's happening, what's going on, and how do I go back tomorrow and change my instruction to make it work for kids. It allows us to adjust instruction to meet those student needs, and then we can ensure that our students are meeting the standards, and that's very important. We have two examples, one of really successful use of CFAs. That is at Irving and that is at East, and we wanted to uplift those. They're both in math. Coincidentally, not so coincidentally, they are supported by the same math coach, Dennis Rotc, and I could not come up and talk to you about this without talking about him, because he is one of our really exemplary coaches. And so Irving moved from 50.8% proficient to 57.4%, and East from 67.3 to 75.5. So my question is, excuse me? Oh, that's an Iowa assessment, excuse me. And so we said, how did that happen? What was the practice? What was in their SIPs? What are we knowing is going on in those areas, in those math areas? Well, it goes back to their PLCs and the CFAs. So I asked the question, how are you using that information? So there were 8 quick points that I wanted to make sure that you knew, because I asked and talked to Dennis excuse me, about that. Number one is the teachers working collaboratively, and they're working as a professional team. They support student learning, and it's the teachers and the coaches and the administrators all together in partnership through this. There is a singular purpose to the PLCs, and that's to improve instruction. So everything in those meetings drives to that intended outcome. Agendas are shared ahead of the meetings. The minutes have clear understanding of the upcoming instructional moves that they're going to do. The administrators can go into those PLC minutes and see what's going to be happening. So they can go in and take the focused instructional tool and they can give feedback on that, connected back to the PLCs, connected to the CFA data. It's all linking. It goes beyond the CFA scores, though. It's intense review of student work samples. So if we know this is the scores that we have received on these CFAs, we now are going to look at those specific items on student work samples. We want to know what the students did well. We want to know where they need support. We want to know with a laser focus where I need to go in tomorrow and the next day and really look at my own instruction to get these kids wrapped back around that and to ensure their success. It's consistently using those CFAs and that data to monitor not only what students aren't doing, but almost more importantly, what they can do. So if we know what they can do, we can use those strengths to get at what they're not able to do well, and then we can build both ways. The other thing is having those open conversations, not just with teachers or between teachers, but open conversations with the students about their own learning. And so it's pulling those students into that conversation. They understand where their strengths are. They understand where they can improve. They can set goals. They can get really excited about this and their learning. And in math particularly, it then builds their confidence. I can be a math learner. I am a math student. I can do this. And if I know they can do this and they know they can do that, then it's the next step they can do that also. So it builds self-confidence. The other two pieces are relationship building and communication. So in our PLCs with the CFAs and the dialogue around that, we are building relationships, not only between teacher to teacher, but it's between teacher and student, and it's between the teacher, student, and the home. And administrators are thrown in there as well. And the communication, transparent communication, is important for all of it. So this is a mechanism, this is part of the system that Charles was talking about earlier, and it all wraps up together and integrates together. That leads us then down the pipeline to the next page. So if you're looking at the next page now, and this is some of the data that I'm very excited about. I'm very excited about achievement of data. I always am. I love achievement. But I'm also very, very excited about our high school graduation data and what we're looking at in terms of graduation. Never before have we had such a focus on individual students and whether they're on track to graduate. Our high schools have not done that this well, and there is still room for improvement. It's even going to get better. So when I sit down and talk with the high school administrative teams and we talk about where are your students on track, what are you doing about this? And they can tell me, bring up the data, and they can say, okay, this student's this student's this, this student's this. They are dealing with that. So it's really exciting, from the MTSS supports and enrichments to the after hours program. This year we started after hours programming in August, right away when school started. And the weekly meetings to gauge student progress, the work that the administrators are doing to strengthen the PLCs in the high schools, the personalizing high school education for the students. Personalization and high school have never really gone together in one sentence much before. And now we're able to say that in one sentence. And that's a very exciting time, and you all as board members should be very proud of what those high schools are doing. Is there room for improvement? Yes, there is, but we are on the right road in big ways. So, projected graduation rate. Last February, Jane got together with administrators, myself, counselors, and we looked at, again, by name. Who are these students? By name. And are they going to graduate or not? And let's look at the numbers. And so our projected enrollment last February for this year's, last year's four-year cohort, which we don't have that information yet from the state, but we'll be getting it soon, was 77.3%. That was from our February meeting. Our five-year cohort from that meeting, we projected to be 82.4. And looking at our 2017 cohort data. We are projecting that to be 79.5. So, you know, those numbers are always going to go up and down a little bit, but we are on a track. Then if you look at the projected on track to graduate, and I looked at this data in April, just like 2 weeks ago. In 2018, our current juniors right now, well, let me tell you the measurement of that. I looked at and said, okay, by this time, this semester, they should have this many credits. And so I looked at everybody who had earned right at that plus 1 credit below, a half and then another half, because I think that's doable to make up. So 2018 current juniors, 74.9% are on track to graduate. Now, that's not enough. That's not good enough. But we have time, we know who they are, and we're going to keep working with them. 2019 current sophomores, this is a class we're a little bit worried about. 73.1 are on track, so we're putting pieces into place to really approach that and deal with that. Again, we have some time to do that. We don't like this. We don't like this percent. So there's going to, we're going to address that, and we keep pushing and doing what we need to do. 2020, our current freshmen, is the best year we've ever had for freshmen on track to graduate. That's 78.5%. I really believe that one of the initiatives we have done this year were the 9th grade houses in the high schools again. And so when we have teachers owning these students, every single student is owned by a group of teachers or a teacher, then they're going to get that individualized, personalized attention. And that's the track we're going down. That's very exciting to us. The numbers will play out. We keep looking at those again and again, so you will get those numbers as we get them and as they play out and ring true. Now, I also want to add to that, though, we're also adding it as we have the purposes around the curriculum and building it to be a more rigorous curriculum. You saw that with the science tonight. We see that with the math. We're seeing that with the literacy. The writing initiative, purposefully increasing the rigor in our courses. The college course enrollment is reflective of that push, of that initiative, and of that movement. So counting only our post-secondary enrollment option courses and our concurrent courses, and this is one of our pay-for-performance metrics. We have 14% of our students this year engaged in one or more. That's students. So 14% of our students engaged in one or more college credit-bearing courses. Last year, it was 13.8. I was hoping it would be a little bit higher, but it didn't. But it's better every year. So we improved, and we're going to improve some more on that. Now, if you take that and look at all the advanced courses, if you take the PSEO, the concurrent, the AP, and the IB, because the AP and the IB have potential of bearing college credits. So we add those all together, and that's 18.2% of our students. That's not the number of courses. I didn't bring that data to the page today. This is the percent of students who are in at least one course or more. That's unduplicated percentage. So think about that. Almost 1 out of, 1 out of 5. That's almost 1 out of 5 of our students is engaged in a potential credit-bearing course for college. And that's going to only increase. So that's really positive. Focused work around rigorous expectations, expansion and direction in advanced programming through Charisse Ortman. She's doing a lot of work with this what rigorous course look like. What does rigorous work look like? The accessible high school courses in middle school. Stephanie's working with the middle school and how we can still increase those courses for middle school students that bear high school credit. And when they start doing that, and in our summer we allow 8th grade students who are moving into 9th grade to come in and to accelerate some courses. When we make room in their schedule in high school, they can take more advanced courses then. And that's what we really want to do. Students and teachers are being better prepared for higher level courses. That's just a given. And it contributes to expanding opportunities for students. And that's really what we want. So my last statement about that is knowing everything that's going on. This is just a teeny little tip of the iceberg of what's happening in Ed Services. We'd have to have, a huge work session all day on a Saturday to let you know all of it. But knowing that we're pushing, knowing where we're going, and I just really want to say this. I'd like to pick up this mic and just drop it right now. But I said, we're at a board meeting, so I can't do that. But I really did want to say, ask you to think about the focused efforts, think about the systems approach. I want you to think about the equity work that is the underlying foundation of everything that we're doing right now. The collaboration, the effective use of data, and disaggregating that data like we've never have before, and then asking the question, why? The adults in the system are impacting student learning, and that's really what it's all about, and that's what we're all about as Ed Services. So we're excited to bring that information to you. I don't know if you have any more questions. It's getting a little late, but bring it on.
Well, I just have a question on this last bit about the college course enrollment. I think it's awesome, but then when I look at the numbers, I just kind of want this clarified, because you're saying the PSEO and concurrent courses, 14%. And then when you add AP and IB, it only goes up 4.2%. So we're saying only 4.2% of our population do IB or AP.
That's probably true. I haven't
4%.
sorted that out individually, but we can look at those individual numbers at any time.
Well, some of the kids who do some of those may be doubly counted.
Yes.
They might have already been in the 14%, so
Right.
an additional 4% do IB or AP but weren't already counted.
It's very possible that students in AP courses very likely
We're
are
already
out
counted,
taking
right,
other
right.
courses at UNI or at Hawkeye as well. These are unduplicated numbers. This is not the number of students in all the courses. This is like 10 students out of 20 or whatever it is. They are taking these types of courses.
The number of students who take at least one.
Yes, and they might be taking 2 courses. It might be
Right.
taking 3 courses.
5 or whatever.
So that's good. Thank you.
And
Dr.
keep in mind also, we've only had our IB program for about 2 years. And so particularly when you're dealing with first generation students whose parents or families are not familiar with what IB is, as time progresses, we're going to see more students get involved in IB. And I think also once we start introducing more of our CTE programs, students who have not really thought about college in terms of credits will start being attracted to take more IB courses as well. So
Well,
I think that will grow.
Well, some of the CTE courses will also be concurrent as well. 'Cause I think my son is getting one next year. That's like construction or something, but it's going to be concurrent with something. So, but to your, my positive comment to your group here, as a parent, I have a daughter coming in as a freshman who's coming in with like 8 credit hours as a freshman, and she's so excited about what I'm scheduling for classes, what these concurrent classes I can take to get me ready for college. And as a parent, seeing a child inspired to do that says a lot to the building staff and the classes and the teachers that are inspiring her, because she spends 8 hours a day with you, and then we had activities and whatnot, afterwards. So a good portion of that is the staff and stuff coming into that and shining through those kids. So.
And I just want to say thank you to the school district for allowing community service agencies such as Talent Search and Upward Bound, who really help to bridge those gaps between the families, because family is critical. So, we know that Jesse's daughter is going to be taking these credits, but he's an engineer as well. Not to diminish how awesome, your daughter is. But no, seriously, so when we talk about bridging the gaps between those subgroups, those programs like Upward Bound, Talent Search, Impact, all of those different community agencies, Head Start, really help those families who don't have that fundamental knowledge. So I want to say thank you to those community agencies, and thank you to the building staff who allow those agencies in your schools, and the paraeducators as well. So I hope that the paraeducators are included in that critical reflection part of your distributive leadership, because that observation is also key from them as well. So thank you.
Oops, I turned my mic off.
And beside the graduation data, because I know the press isn't here, but they're going to be listening to this tape, and I want to make a comment. I want you to write tentative, draft, snapshot, dipstick on there, because Those are the numbers that we influence. You know, the 2016 at one point in time that said 71. So that's that. Once we know who to attack in a positive way, wraparound supports too. So when we look at these numbers, these are kids who are doing their thing, but that's what is our call to action. So those are not the numbers that it will be, but those are the numbers that we influence. So when we put them there, we want to be transparent because that's what we do. But when you say, oh my gosh, they're on track to have a 73%, well, at one time that might have been 65. So that's what we're doing. So I just want to put that in perspective.
I'll echo your comments because I saw that during my school visit today. I saw that in action, where the administration and teachers were talking about summer school and what kids we need to get back here and work on and different things. So
that's right.
You're not always saying it, but we're seeing it too. So I mean.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Services,
thank you all.
that's very thorough. Thank you.
And don't be surprised, you're probably going to get a couple emails. We'll keep thinking. So. I know. Well, we interrupted. Way to go.
Sue, I just didn't say
All
date,
right.
though.
Is there anything further on that then? If not, then I'll move on to Dr. Lindemann's superintendent's report.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'm just going to say that our thoughts and prayers go out to the two families that suffered great losses this past week. We lost a student, Jacob Simon, at Kingsley, and so we think of him and his family, and then also to our dear principal, Liz Crowley. It was quite a week for us, and I don't need to go into stories, but we've suffered a loss, and I do appreciate everybody's prayers and all the wraparound supports that we've had there. And I would mention too that the paper detailed an Elizabeth Crowley Education Fund that is available through Veridian Credit Union. So if anybody wanted to support that, what a great way to honor her legacy. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to board member comments. I'm going to start with Rhonda tonight.
I just want to say thank you to all of the teachers, the paraeducators, the students for persisting in the age of social media and with everything. So I just want to say thank you to them.
Great. Mike?
Just to comment on Dr. McNulty had discussed achievement. We're also kind of working on staff negotiations and contracts with teachers and other staff. In previous contracts, we've only given compensation based on education level and years of service. And I think this is an opportunity for us to compensate staff for their abilities and their knowledge and not just their years of service. So I think it's a good thing in a lot of ways that we're able to look at individuals, not only students, but staff members, and how they are doing and how their achievement is growing and how that's affecting our district. So I would hope that those staff members look at this as a positive move and not necessarily a negative move. That's all I have.
Lyle?
Just to comment on the EarthCom, I voted against it for reasons I stated. It's probably the best book that's available.
Right.
I don't necessarily dispute that. I mean, no book is going to change that paragraph to say, hey, what global warming is great for agriculture. They're not going to sell any books, even if it's the truth. So I just hope that internally our own staff kind of balance it out, particularly we're in an agricultural area.
Right.
And we understand that authors of the books probably did not. So, at any rate, I think it's a good basis on the other. Particularly, it was also pretty strong on the contribution of the tilt of the Earth and the axis in terms of changing climate. So, so there were some pretty good points in there that I saw, particularly on those areas.
Duly noted. Thanks. Sue?
Well, I just want to thank the Ed Services for a very informative presentation. And I also want to remind our viewers to watch out in the nicer weather now with kids crossing the street. I live very close to a school, and I almost saw someone get hit today. So as a driver, be more cautious, and as a walker, look both ways.
Duly noted. Again, Angie.
So while we're on A, I just thought this weekend I had the opportunity to end the weekend on a positive note, attending the annual cotillion that's held by the Club Les Dames, where we got to feature some of the great achievements of our women that are graduating from our high schools, and their accomplishments now, but also their future aspirations. So all of them had some type of future aspiration as to what they were going to go on into, and I think that's inspired by Waterloo schools. I only think there was 2 or 3 kids that were outside of the district, so I think that was pretty amazing, and those girls looked amazing, and their accomplishments were great. So
thanks, Jesse.
I got 2 comments, and first one is a little bit of echo here, but as a Lou Henry parent, I like to say very appreciative of the support that's been given to that building, and I know the staff is still struggling some, but I got a chance. I just stopped. I was off today. I stopped in just to see things, and the continued support for that building as well. And it's always a great opportunity to see kids and see the staff trying to respond. So, and then on a positive, so last week I had visitors from my family from Kentucky visiting, so it was always nice to have company. We don't usually get too much, but with that, we had a chance to take them to Culture Fest, which was very new for them. Coming from rural Kentucky, there's diversity's not very huge there, and I had a child that was singing in the honor choir, but just for him to go in the building and see some of the great things and just things that were just like, oh my gosh, and so hats off to everybody that organized that and what they saw. My mom was very moved by the honor choir and how just a group of kids from across the district put together and how well they performed, and then treated to a little bit of Irish folk dancing on top of that. So hats off to that event, and all the work goes into it. I don't think it had been mentioned, but that was a good deal this week as well.
It was super fun. So I just have a couple quick things. I was at, I had 2 visits last week. I was out at Orange and also at Lowell. And I just want to thank those staffs for letting me come in and walk around. And just, if anybody doesn't think our schools are a little community and a little family, you got to go walk in and you got to feel what it's like to watch kids come up and hug their principal and ask for, whatever it might be. I'm hungry. I skinned my knee. I need my medicine, whatever it might be. I need help on my math. I don't know what page I'm on. All that stuff. But it was just really great to I appreciate that, being in those buildings. And then I also just wanted to give a shout out to East High. They hosted the Solo Ensemble Fest this past weekend for vocal music and orchestra and band. And so they started at 8 in the morning, and they had people in the building. I think every single room on the 1st and 2nd floor, outside the auditorium, including the auditorium, the cafeteria, was all being used with people performing. And I heard lots of people who are coming from different districts talk about how cool that building is and how nice and clean it looked, and just all that. I know it's a lot of work for our music staffs to put that on. So I was very proud as a band mom. I was like, yay. So I don't think that I have anything else unless anybody else does this evening.
One more thing, the foundation breakfast.
Oh, it's next Tuesday.
Yes. So if you want to talk about that.
Sure, I can. Go ahead. So the Waterloo Community Schools Foundation is having a breakfast next Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. It's down at 5 Sullivan Brothers. You can go to their website. There's a link from our Waterloo Community Schools. You can go. It's $25. You can come. They're going to have a great speaker. And we always have, my favorite part is that all of our buildings have students that come and present that morning. And it's just a really great time to kind of showcase our district and what's happening and what great things the foundation is doing. So they've given away, I think we've already have given away their millionth, their millionth dollar, but they're getting really close. So
well, and as that ELP teacher from Orange, they are getting to go because of the foundation.
Yeah,
so.
that's right. Yeah. So thanks, Sue. Good reminder. All right. Is there anything else? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. In a second. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks. Good night.
Bless you. Perfect timing.
Perfect. I was going to remind me to tell you that I talked to Bill Grove. He emailed me. And I don't know if you knew that Dan Cox was applying for the job, the superintendency job. Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
He emailed me and I said, he goes, I think he was at East maybe, and I was like, I can do you one better. He was Parker's at Hoover, and so. But anyway, he emailed me yesterday to tell me that they gave it to a woman from Kansas City Public Schools. So you'll be seeing that, and I just wanted to let you know. I thought.